The silence was thick as Lieutenant Cole Anderson stood at the entrance of the Silent Queen's chamber. The vast sterile corridor felt endless, stretching far beyond the walls he could see. His heart beat a little faster, and his palms grew clammy, though he knew this was a mission just like the countless others he had undertaken for the Earth Intergalactic Navy. But this was different. The weight of the moment was heavy, and something in the air told him this was no ordinary diplomatic engagement. He had only been briefed briefly about the mission: escort the Queen, negotiate peace, and ensure that Earth's interests were safeguarded as the alliance with the Cylon Dominion continued. That was it. But standing at the edge of the chamber now, the whole situation felt much more complicated than the surface-level objectives. A soft, otherworldly hum filled the space around him. His steps echoed louder than he intended as he walked toward the grand doors. His boot heels clicked on the cold floor, each step a small but significant movement that drew him closer to the unknown. The door, when it opened, revealed the Queen's personal chamber, bathed in a pale green glow that seemed to shimmer as though the walls themselves were alive. Inside, he found her standing at the far end of the room. The Queen was no ordinary being. Her features were exotic yet regal, her tall figure adorned in robes that seemed to shift colors with her every movement. The glow from the walls caught in her hair, turning it into a silken cascade of golden threads that shimmered with an ethereal light. Her eyes, though, were the most striking. Golden orbs that gleamed with an intelligence and power that could command entire fleets if she wished. And now, her eyes were fixed on him. Cole hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to approach, but before he could speak, the Queen's voice rang out, clear and sharp. "You!" she called, her voice cool and commanding, yet underlined with a sharp edge of anger. "Step forward." Her gaze was unwavering, locking onto him as if she could pierce through his very soul. Cole, still unsure of the nature of this audience, took a cautious step forward. He had read her reputation. This Queen was not someone you approached lightly. Her people, the Cylon Dominion, were one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. Her intellect was legendary, and her power was undeniable. But none of that prepared him for what was to come. As he stepped closer, the tension in the room grew more intense. Every step seemed to make the air thicker, as if the very atmosphere was charged with the Queen's fury. He swallowed hard, doing his best to remain composed. Despite his training, despite everything, he couldn't help but feel a knot tighten in his stomach. The Queen didn't flinch. Her eyes narrowed, studying him with a sharp intensity that made him feel like an insect under a microscope. She took a slow, deliberate step toward him, each movement exuding elegance and authority.
"What is it that you humans think you know about us?"
she asked, her voice smooth but edged with disdain.
"You think that your diplomacy, your weak strategies, can influence the balance of power?"
"You think you can manipulate the mighty Cylon Dominion?" Cole's heart raced, but he didn't speak. He didn't dare. The Queen's presence demanded respect, and he knew better than to interrupt her when she was clearly upset. "I trusted you, Lieutenant," she continued, her words cutting through the air like a blade. "I trusted your people to honor our agreements. And what have you done?" "You have broken that trust. You have jeopardized everything we have built." Cole's mind raced. He didn't know what she was talking about. There had been no major incidents, no direct breaches of their agreement. The mission was supposed to be simple. He had been given orders to facilitate peace, but it was clear now that something had gone terribly wrong. Before he could respond, the Queen spoke again, her anger rising. "Tell me, Lieutenant, do you even know what your people have done?" The room seemed to grow colder, and Cole suddenly realized that this was not a normal diplomatic mission at all. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. Something serious had happened. And he was caught right in the middle of it. I don't understand," Cole stammered, trying to make sense of the situation. His mind spun as he searched for something to say, something to explain the confusion. I've only been following my orders, ma'am. I don't know of any breach. The Queen raised a hand, silencing him instantly. The air hummed with the power of her presence. You are lying to me, Lieutenant, or you are simply too blind to see the truth. Her eyes glittered with unspoken fury. Either way, you are responsible for what happens next. Cole took a step back, his pulse quickening. He had never seen anyone like her. Her aura alone made him feel as though he was standing at the edge of an abyss. He was a human, but in this moment, he felt small, insignificant, and out of place. The Queen turned away from him, her gaze sweeping over the grand chamber. I have learned the truth about your people's actions, Lieutenant, she said, her voice cold and firm. And it is not just a betrayal of our alliance. It is a betrayal of everything we stand for. You have placed us all in grave danger.
Cole's mind raced. What could she possibly mean?
What had happened? Was this a trap?
A misunderstanding? He had no answers, only more questions.
But before he could voice another inquiry, the Queen spoke again, her voice suddenly softer, almost resigned. Your people, Lieutenant, have made enemies within our very ranks, traitors who seek to destroy what we have built together. She paused, her shoulders sagging ever so slightly. And they have betrayed us all. Cole stood frozen, trying to process her words. Traitors? Within the Xylan Dominion? But how? He had no idea what she was talking about. His mind raced, trying to catch up with her cryptic statements. It was then that he realized how serious the situation truly was. We have been keeping secrets from you, Lieutenant, the Queen continued, her voice now filled with an emotion Cole had not expected. Vulnerability. I knew about the treason before anyone else. I've kept it hidden to protect my people. But now it has reached the point where I can no longer hold it in the shadows. And I need your help, Lieutenant. Her golden eyes bore into his, and for the first time, Cole felt a glimmer of understanding. The Queen's anger was not just political. It was personal. She was a ruler who had been betrayed by those closest to her, and now she had nowhere else to turn. You have been brought here for a reason, she said, her voice steady once more. I need you to be the one who uncovers the traitors in my empire. You are the only one who can help me stop them before it's too late. Cole's mind was spinning, but in that moment, something clicked. The Queen wasn't just angry because of the situation. She was angry because she had been forced to carry the weight of her people's betrayal on her own. And now, she was asking for his help. Will you help me, Lieutenant? She asked, her voice softer now, almost pleading. The weight of her question hung in the air, and for the first time since entering the chamber, Cole felt the pressure of the moment. He had no idea what he was stepping into, but there was no turning back now. The fate of the Alliance, and perhaps the entire galaxy, rested in his hands. He nodded slowly, finally finding his voice. I'll help you, Your Majesty, whatever it takes. The Queen's gaze softened, and for a brief moment Cole thought he saw something more than anger in her eyes, something that resembled trust. Cole was left standing in the silence of the Queen's chamber, the weight of her words still heavy in the air. The Queen, standing before him with an aura of power and authority, was no longer the cold, distant ruler he had assumed her to be. There was something more to her anger, something deeper, something he hadn't yet understood. As the Queen's golden eyes held his, Cole could feel the gravity of the situation pressing down on him. Her gaze was unwavering, unblinking, as though she could see through him, peeling away his defenses. He had expected an encounter filled with political formality and rigid diplomacy, but what he was experiencing now was something far more personal. She wasn't just angry at the humans. She was angry at the betrayal within her own empire. Tell me, Lieutenant, she said, her voice cool but strained with underlying frustration. Do you know what your people have done? Do you even understand the depth of this betrayal? Cole, still struggling to process the gravity of the situation, shook his head. He wanted to speak, to ask what she meant, but the words were caught in his throat. He had been briefed on the mission, instructed to engage in diplomatic talks with the Silent Dominion. But this wasn't about diplomacy. This was about something far more dangerous. The Queen turned away, pacing slowly across the chamber, her movements deliberate and measured. Cole's eyes followed her, his mind racing as he tried to piece together the puzzle she had laid out before him. "I thought you understood the stakes," the Queen continued, her voice softer now but still carrying a weight of sadness that seemed out of place for someone so powerful. "But this is no longer just about treaties or alliances. This is about survival. Mine, yours, everyone's." She stopped, her back still turned to him, her hands clasped behind her. The Queen exhaled deeply, as though trying to summon the strength to continue. Cole took a cautious step forward, his curiosity and concern growing by the second. The anger had been replaced by a deep sense of loss, something far more vulnerable. He could feel the tension in the air, the kind of tension that comes when a person is about to reveal something they've been hiding for far too long. "You see, Lieutenant," she began, turning to face him again, her expression now a mix of frustration and determination. "I have spent my entire life building the Xylan Dominion, fighting to protect my people. I have made decisions, tough decisions, for the good of all.
But now I am being forced to confront a truth that I never thought I would have to face." Her words hung in the air, the unspoken meaning behind them leaving a trail of uncertainty.
Cole could sense that whatever she was about to say would change everything. He waited, silently urging her to continue. "Some of my closest advisors," the Queen continued, her voice trembling slightly. "Some of the very people I trusted the most have betrayed me. They have been working with outside forces, enemies of both our people, for their own gain. And now they are plotting against everything I fought for. Betrayal. It seemed almost impossible." The Queen, this powerful being who commanded entire fleets, who had brought her people to the edge of greatness, was facing treachery within her own ranks. It was a concept that Cole couldn't fully comprehend. The Xylan Dominion had been one of the most formidable forces in the galaxy, its influence stretching far and wide. How could something like this happen within such a well-guarded empire?
"You think that just because we stand as a mighty empire," the Queen said, almost as if reading his thoughts, "we are immune to the same weaknesses that plague lesser nations.
You think that betrayal is something only the weak suffer from?" She shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips.
"No, Lieutenant. It is the strong who are tested the hardest."
Cole felt a sense of sympathy wash over him. He had never considered what it must be like to lead an empire like the Xylan Dominion. The pressure, the constant struggle for power, the ever-present threat of enemies both internal and external. But this was something far more personal. The Queen wasn't just fighting for control. She was fighting to protect everything she had worked so hard to build.
"But why didn't you tell me?"
Cole asked, his voice soft but filled with genuine concern.
"Why keep this hidden from me?"
The Queen's eyes softened for a brief moment, and for the first time Cole saw a flicker of something that resembled vulnerability.
"I had to," she said quietly. "I couldn't afford to show weakness, especially not to someone like you."
You are the representative of Earth, of your people. I needed you to see me as a ruler, as a leader, not as someone who could be so easily manipulated. Cole took a step closer, sensing that this was the moment where everything changed. The Queen, once an impenetrable force, was now opening up to him in a way he had never expected. He could see the weight of her words on her shoulders, the burden of leadership pressing down on her in a way that was both overwhelming and profoundly human.
"I didn't want to involve you," she continued, her voice steadying. "But now it's too late. The betrayal has already begun, and I need your help, Lieutenant."
Cole's mind raced.
Hell, what could he do?
He was just a diplomat, a messenger between Earth and the Xylan Dominion. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't an investigator. But as he looked into the Queen's eyes, he saw something that made him hesitate, a deep, unspoken trust that he hadn't expected. The Queen wasn't asking him to just serve her as a diplomat. She was asking him to become something more, to become a partner in the fight to save her empire. "You, the only one I can trust now," she said, her voice raw. "You have no ties to the Xylan Dominion, no loyalties to the factions that are conspiring against me. You are an outsider, and that is why I need you. I need someone who can see the truth, someone who isn't clouded by their own ambitions." Cole took a deep breath, his mind swirling with the enormity of what she was asking. He had never signed up for anything like this. His entire career had been about managing peace, keeping the balance, and avoiding conflict. But this was different. This was a fight for survival. A fight against an enemy that wasn't just a foreign force, but a betrayal from within. "I'll help you," Cole said, his voice firm despite the uncertainty swirling in his chest. "Whatever it takes." The Queen's eyes softened, and for the first time Cole saw a flicker of something that resembled gratitude. "I knew I could count on you," she said, her voice steady again. "But this is just the beginning. There is much to do, and the road ahead will not be easy." Cole nodded, a sense of resolve settling within him. He wasn't sure what he was walking into, but he knew one thing for certain. There was no turning back. The Xylan Dominion was on the brink of destruction, and if he didn't act, everything would collapse. This wasn't just about politics anymore. This was about saving a galaxy from itself. The weight of the Queen's request hung heavy in the air as Cole stood before her, processing the enormity of the task she had just placed on his shoulders. He had been thrust into the heart of a galactic crisis, one that involved betrayal, deception, and the survival of not just an empire, but an entire galaxy. What had started as a simple diplomatic mission was now something far beyond anything Cole had imagined. The Queen, once an untouchable figure of power, was now seeking his help to root out treachery within her own ranks. He looked into her eyes, which still held that piercing intensity, a mixture of desperation and determination. She wasn't just a ruler now. She was a woman on the edge, fighting to save everything she had worked so hard to build. And she was asking for his help. Cole felt a deep sense of responsibility. This wasn't just about loyalty to Earth anymore. It was about something greater, about doing the right thing, even if it meant stepping into a role he had never intended to take on. "I need you, Lieutenant." The Queen's voice broke through his thoughts. "I need someone I can trust to help me root out the traitors in my empire."
"You are the only one who can do this." Her words echoed in Cole's mind as he stood there, unsure of what to say next.
He had never considered the possibility of betrayal within the Xylan Dominion, not in his wildest dreams. The Xylan people were known for their strength, their unity. The idea that anyone within their ranks could seek to destroy everything they had built seemed impossible. But as he watched the Queen, her face strained with the burden of leadership, Cole understood. This wasn't just about politics. It wasn't just about alliances and treaties.
This was about survival. The Queen wasn't asking him for a favor.
She was pleading for help, for someone to stand by her side and ensure the future of her people.
"I don't know what to say," Cole finally managed to say. His voice was steady, but his mind was racing. "I never thought things could be this bad." The Queen nodded, as though she had expected this reaction. She moved to the center of the room and turned toward a holographic display that flickered to life in front of her. The screen showed a map of the Xylan Dominion with various sectors highlighted in red. The Queen gestured to the screen and the image zoomed in on several regions. "These are the areas where the traitors are most active," she explained. "They've infiltrated key positions within my government, my military. They've even managed to corrupt some of my most trusted advisors." Cole studied the map closely, his mind absorbing the details. He wasn't a military strategist,
but he could see the gravity of the situation. The red areas on the map weren't just regions of space. They were the heart of the Silent Dominion.
If the traitors controlled these areas, the entire empire could crumble.
Their goal is simple, the Queen continued, her voice cold and unwavering.
They want to overthrow me, destabilize the Dominion, and align themselves with the enemy factions that have been circling our borders. They believe they can control the galaxy by using Earth as a pawn in their game.
Cole's stomach tightened at the thought. Earth, a planet that had barely begun to make its mark in the galactic community, was now caught in the crossfire of an intergalactic struggle. He had always known that diplomacy and peacekeeping were fragile endeavors, but this was something far more dangerous. The Queen paused, her golden eyes locking onto Cole's.
You've been chosen, Lieutenant, because you are a neutral party. You have no allegiances to any of the factions involved.
You have no ties to the Xylan Dominion, no personal interests in the outcome of this struggle. That makes you the perfect candidate for this task.
Cole nodded slowly. He understood.
He was an outsider, someone who wasn't weighed down by the politics and history of the Silent Dominion. He could see things from a different perspective, without the biases and loyalties that clouded the judgment of those who had lived their entire lives within the Empire. But that didn't make the task any easier. He was being asked to root out traitors within an empire that had been built on strength and unity. To do so would mean facing powerful enemies, people who had risen to positions of trust and influence within the Dominion, people who would stop at nothing to maintain their control.
I'll do it, Cole said, his voice firm. The decision had been made.
There was no turning back now. But I'll need more information.
I need to know everything you've discovered about these traitors. Their names, their locations, their connections.
I can't go into this blindly. The Queen's expression softened, and for the first time, she looked at him not just as a diplomat, but as an ally.
I will give you everything I know. But be warned, Lieutenant, this will not be easy.
The traitors are cunning, and they will not hesitate to use whatever means necessary to achieve their goals. You will be fighting not just against them, but against the very people you think you can trust. Cole's mind began to process the magnitude of what he had just agreed to. He wasn't just being asked to uncover a conspiracy. He was being asked to take down an entire faction of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. The Silent Dominion wasn't just a government. It was a war machine, a force to be reckoned with. And now Cole was stepping into the heart of it. "I'm ready," he said, his voice steady and resolute.
I'll do whatever it takes to help you stop them.
The Queen gave a small nod, and then, without another word, she activated a secondary display. The screen flickered again, and a list of names appeared. Individuals, factions, and military units suspected of being involved in the treasonous activities. Cole studied the list, his eyes scanning each name, each face, trying to make sense of it all.
This is just the beginning, the Queen said softly. Once you begin this mission, there will be no going back.
You will be in the heart of the Dominion's darkest secrets. You will have to use every tool at your disposal to succeed.
I understand, Cole replied, his voice unwavering.
He knew what he was about to face. The stakes were higher than he had ever imagined, and the risks were greater than anything he had ever encountered. But there was no turning back now. He had made his choice, and now he had to see it through. The Queen stepped forward, her expression hardening once more.
I will provide you with the resources you need.
My fleet, my intelligence network, everything at your disposal. But you must act quickly. The traitors grow bolder with each passing day, and soon they will be in a position to strike a decisive blow against us. Cole nodded. He had no illusions about the dangers ahead, but he also knew one thing. If he didn't act, if he didn't do everything in his power to stop the traitors, the consequences would be catastrophic. The Queen gave him one last look, a mixture of gratitude and wariness. Remember, Lieutenant, this is not just about saving the Silent Dominion. This is about protecting the future of the galaxy. Earth, the Cylon Dominion, every world in between. Our fate is tied together. If we fall, we all fall.
As Cole turned to leave, the weight of her words settled in his chest.
He was no longer just a diplomat. He was now part of something far greater. He was part of a war, one that would determine the future of the galaxy itself. Cole stood at the threshold of the Queen's chamber, feeling the weight of the mission pressing on him like a heavy cloak. It had only been a few days since he had agreed to help the Queen, yet everything had changed. What began as a diplomatic mission had quickly spiraled into something far more dangerous, and the deeper Cole dug into the conspiracy, the more he realized how much was at stake. The Queen had given him everything he needed: a list of suspects, intelligence on their movements, and access to her network of spies and military assets. But the more he learned, the more daunting the task became. The traitors within the Xylan Dominion were well placed, with positions of power that gave them access to crucial information. Some were generals, others high-ranking officials, and still more were members of the royal court. It wasn't just a few rogue agents. It was an entire network, a web of corruption that had infiltrated the very heart of the Empire. Cole's role had become clear. He was to investigate these individuals, find out who could be trusted, and uncover the full extent of the treason before it was too late. But with every step forward, he felt the pressure building. The Queen had trusted him, placed her faith in him, but she had also warned him that the path ahead would be treacherous. And she wasn't wrong. He had spent the last few days gathering information, speaking with informants, and meeting with members of the Queen's inner circle. Each conversation brought him closer to the truth, but also deeper into the mire of deception and betrayal. Some of the people he spoke to seemed genuinely loyal to the Queen, but there were others whose motives were far less clear. Cole had learned to trust his instincts, but in a place like this, where everyone had something to hide, it was difficult to know who to believe. The traitors, it seemed, had planned their actions with careful precision. They had manipulated the political landscape, turning allies into enemies, and sowing discord where there had once been unity. They had orchestrated everything from behind the scenes, pulling strings and making moves that were invisible to most. They had even managed to convince several of the Queen's closest advisors that the Cylon Dominion was on the verge of collapse, planting the seeds of doubt in their minds. Cole knew that the Queen couldn't trust anyone fully, not even her most trusted allies. The treason had spread so deeply that no one was immune. Every conversation, every meeting had to be approached with caution. He couldn't afford to show weakness, and he couldn't afford to make a mistake. But the more he uncovered, the more conflicted he became. He had come to the Cylon Dominion with the intent to preserve peace, to protect Earth's interests, but now he was knee-deep in an intergalactic power struggle. The Cylon Dominion wasn't just a political entity. It was a living, breathing organism, a complex web of loyalty, power, and ambition. And at the center of it all was the Queen, the woman who had trusted him to help save her empire. Cole wasn't sure what to make of the Queen anymore. He had seen her anger, her frustration, but he had also seen a side of her that was vulnerable, someone who wasn't just a ruler but a leader struggling to hold everything together. She was fighting for survival, not just for herself, but for her people and the future of the galaxy. Her mission was clear, and in a way, it had become his too. He had always believed in the power of diplomacy, the strength of words to resolve conflicts, but now he was learning that sometimes words alone were not enough. The Queen was not just fighting political opponents. She was fighting a war within her own empire, against people who would do anything to see her fall. She was at the helm of a ship on the verge of sinking, and Cole was the one she had turned to for help. The more he thought about it, the more he realized how much his own life had changed. He was no longer just an officer from Earth. He was now a part of something much bigger, something that could alter the course of history. He wasn't just helping the Queen anymore. He was part of a larger struggle that would determine the fate of entire worlds. As Cole sat in the Queen's chamber, going over the latest reports, he felt a deep sense of responsibility weighing on him. The traitors were out there, hiding in plain sight, and he was the only one who could expose them. The Queen had trusted him, and now it was up to him to prove that she had made the right choice. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the door opening. The Queen entered, her presence commanding the room as always. She was dressed in her regal attire, her eyes sharp and focused, but there was something different about her today. The anger that had once filled her eyes had softened, replaced by a look of quiet determination. She had always been a leader, but now she seemed more like a woman who had been forced to confront the hardest truth of all, her own vulnerability. Cole stood up as she entered, giving her a respectful nod. She didn't say anything at first, merely walking to the center of the room and standing with her back to him, looking out over the stars that filled the view beyond the window.
"I've made my decision," the Queen said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of her words. "I will no longer tolerate the betrayal within my ranks."
"We will act, Lieutenant, and we will do so swiftly." Cole's heart quickened.
He had been expecting this moment, but hearing it spoken aloud made it all the more real. The Queen was ready to take action, and that meant the game was no longer just about investigation. It was about confrontation.
"I understand," Cole replied, his voice steady. "What do you need me to do?"
The Queen turned to face him, her golden eyes locking onto his with unwavering intensity. "You will lead the operation, Lieutenant. You will expose the traitors, and you will bring them to justice."
"There will be no mercy. We cannot afford to hesitate."
Cole nodded. He knew what needed to be done. The Queen had given him a task that was both monumental and dangerous, but it was a task that had to be done, and if he didn't do it, no one else would. "Are you ready?" the Queen asked, her voice softening for the first time. Cole met her gaze, feeling the weight of the question. This was it. There was no turning back now. "I'm ready," he said, his voice firm with resolve. "Let's begin." The Queen nodded, and for a brief moment Cole saw something in her eyes. A flicker of hope. It was a fleeting moment, but it was enough. She believed in him. And now he had to prove that belief was not misplaced. The Queen turned to the holographic map that still hovered in the air between them, her hand sweeping over it with purpose. "We will begin with the military. They have the power to sway the course of this war, and if we expose them, the rest will crumble." Cole watched her, seeing the weight of leadership in her every movement. She was no longer just a queen. She was a woman on a mission, a woman who would stop at nothing to protect her empire. And as he stood by her side, Cole realized that he was no longer just a pawn in a political game. He was an active participant in something far greater. The stakes were higher than ever before, and now it was time to act. The fate of the Cylon Dominion, of Earth, and of the entire galaxy rested in their hands. There was no turning back. Got it.